Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. You are now witnessing or being a part of part 2 of the episode that we're doing with the Racial Justice Commission. We're going to be talking about the meat and potatoes of this, which are the ballot proposals, with Jennifer Jones Austin. And Jennifer is the chair of the Racial Justice Commission. But let me also introduce you to the Savvy panel. We have Phyllis White-Thorne, we have Lisa Bing, and Christina Newman-Scott. Thank you, ladies, for joining.
Thank you.
So this is what this thing is all about, right, Jennifer? These three, this is what the work has been about, these 3 ballot initiatives. Talk us through each of them so that people listening and watching are able to make an informed decision. Because we can't tell people how to vote, but we can give them an education. Right?
Absolutely. So first, let me just thank you for doing this. I'm really excited. And there's a part of me that's a little nervous, even though like I'm hanging with my sisters, right?
Exactly, right.
And I think it's because
That was me this morning.
like that energy that I feel when I think and talk about these initiatives. New York is on the precipice of doing something that has never been done in the history of this nation. Racial justice has never been embedded in government functioning. And if New York City, the New York City electorate, vote up, vote out and up, these three ballot proposals, racial equity, racial justice will become a part of government. It will be a core government function, the way that we do business. Unprecedented in the city, unprecedented in the nation. We can make history. These 3 ballot measures are designed to begin to dismantle structural racism in government functioning. As we talked about earlier, racism is not just a one-to-one relationship.
Right.
You know, many of us were raised believing that racism is, oh, your neighbor doesn't like you, or your teacher seems to be biased towards you because of the color of your skin.
Right.
But the more that we look at these issues, we understand power, it's all about power. Racism is actually a tool. It's not the end in itself. It's a tool to uphold unjust power structures. And so what the Racial Justice Commission has determined to do is to begin to look at where is power seated? And in our society, it's seated in the laws that govern what we do, you know, who gets to have say in what, who has power, who makes decisions concerning finances, concerning education, concerning who sits in this particular office or that, healthcare, etc. The Racial Justice Commission has gone into the New York City Charter, which is our Constitution, and has said there are 3 critical steps that we can take to begin to dismantle the stronghold of racism on government functioning and in turn our lives. The first proposal is to create a preamble for the New York City Charter. The New
And
York
why
City
is a
Constitution.
preamble important?
A preamble is essentially a statement of values that helps to guide and inform how people should interface with their government, how government officials and government staff persons should see the people with whom they engage on an everyday basis. Here in New York City, we believe that we should, in this preamble, say first, you know, what are the harms that have been visited upon people of color, beginning with the Lenape people, whose land was taken to create New York City? And then let's look at the atrocities that have followed therefrom, beginning with the harms visited upon people of African descent. So we believe that you can't really address a problem if you first don't name it. Right. So what the preamble does is it names the problem, and then it sets up a statement of values to help inform and guide New York City functioning.
So does this preamble then undergird everything that follows?
Absolutely. So it says what every New Yorker should expect when it comes to education, healthcare, their environments with respect to sanitation and clean and safe, climate, related environment protections. It speaks to what every New Yorker should expect when it comes to how you interface with government actors, whether they be behind the desk when you're going for when you're going to get access for public assistance, or you're going to register your child for school, how you should be treated regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or sexual identity, and the list goes on and on. That's the first. It doesn't create a legal right of action, but it helps to inform the value base that we should be holding when we engage with every New Yorker.
Why should people that don't understand this language care? Like, how do we make this relevant at the dinner table?
Because what we all understand is that when you think about racism, you can like legislate your way out of racism, or think you can at every turn, but it's values, beliefs, mindsets that undergird how we engage and work with one another. So if New York City takes the initiative of saying, we believe that every New Yorker should have a quality education, it, as the institution, the stronghold, is setting forth the value that then we expect every person in government to adhere to.
But
That's
if
why
our
it's
mindsets are
important.
where they are,
Right.
how's that?
Right.
How is
Because
this
if
just not
now,
worse?
if we move it, let me talk about the second proposal, and that'll help you to understand. If I, as a government employee, am told that this is a value base that I should adhere to,
Yeah.
but I don't uphold that value base, there's now a second proposal that's going to provide a checks and balances for
Okay,
that.
Now we're
good, 'cause
talking.
accountability.
Right.
The
Exactly.
second proposal establishes in perpetuity an Office of Racial Equity. Our current mayor, Mayor Adams, has stood up an Office of Equity. That's important, very important. But he's done so by executive order because that's what his powers allow. By establishing an Office of Racial Equity through the proposal, the charter change, that
embedded.
office is now
It's
embedded.
concrete.
It's concrete, like the NYPD, the fire department, the Department of
And it
Environmental
doesn't matter
Protection.
who's in office.
Does not matter who's in office. And that office then is held responsible for working with every city agency across the city of New York, that every agency has to be accountable for, has to develop a plan to show how they're going to work towards equity. And
And metrics, meaning
there will be metrics, right? We're going to look at it. So keep in mind, we're not looking at, okay, if the highest indicator of well-being is, say, a 10 for the most affluent community with respect to schools and healthcare institutions and sanitation, and the siting of clinics and the like. If they're at a 10, we're not looking at the community that would be, that as a baseline would have a 1 to just get on up to a 2 or 3.
right.
No, the city of New York is going to have to demonstrate how they're going to move that agent, that city, that community, to be at the same level as the most affluent. There will be a commission, a racial justice commission that lives in perpetuity as well, that provides the checks and balances on this Office of Racial Equity, as well as the New York City community at large, because the New York City mayor and his teams are going to have to publish these reports and hold themselves accountable.
How do you get people to buy in that are bound and determined not to? How do we get them to take it seriously so that the effort is successful?
Well, it begins with if the mayor is held accountable for it, and the mayor's agencies and offices are held accountable for it because it's now in the charter, then it is the responsibility of the New York City community. Wait, let me finish. It is then the responsibility of the New York City community, when those reports are published that show that they're not meeting the mark, to hold the
Then
mayor
they're
accountable.
What she
Right?
said, we're talking about how do you get the public to see the importance of voting for these proposals?
So let me do this first, because I want to touch upon that, but I want to make sure we do not miss the third proposal, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So let's do
Yes.
this, and then if that's
Yeah.
okay with you, we'll come back to it. Because all of these proposals are critically important. The third proposal, well, let me just finish and say the second proposal, Office of Racial Equity, and then a complement to it is a racial justice commission that lives in perpetuity, that is comprised of everyday New Yorkers appointed by the public advocate, the comptroller, city council leaders, and by the mayor's office. Everyday New Yorkers that are going to be the checks and balances for the city. They're going to come from our communities, and they're going to say, you're not meeting the mark here, or you need to be centered on this or that. And they will be the voice for the city of New York. The third proposal would establish, for the first time in this nation, a measurement of the true cost of living.
And that's the one that baffles me a bit, meaning talk us through that. Yes, right.
So, a
True cost.
Yeah.
a true cost of living.
Right.
So let me level set. Here in America, across this nation, states and municipalities use what is termed the federal poverty level to help determine, how much it costs for people to live and make ends meet, and where income supports may be
housing.
necessary, like affordable housing, child care subsidies, transportation subsidies, food supports, access to health care, subsidized health care. It also is often used to help determine what fair wages are. The federal poverty level says that anywhere in America, whether you're in New York City or you're in Wichita, Kansas, a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children, with a gross income of $27,750 is technically not poor. And then that dollar is used to set eligibility for all of these income supports, and also to determine and help influence wages. Federal minimum wage, state wages.
Wages, very important.
Here in New York
That's
City.
where it really matters.
For the
That's
public.
it.
That's
So
the hope
here
for
in
the
New York
public.
City,
Lead with 3.
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
but
right.
here's the deal. No, wait. You can lead with 3, but they're all important, because if you don't have
No,
any
I agree with
accountability,
you. I agree with you.
in
But
there,
3
right?
is going to really
Right.
push
Yes.
the people.
And
So,
move
so
that
let me
needle.
just
Move
help you
that
see how
needle.
this plays out. Right? In New York City, it has been estimated, according to the self-sufficiency standard, which is produced every year by the Women's Center and the University of Wisconsin, it has been established that a family of 3, a mother and 2 young children, in our most technically, or so supposedly our most affordable borough, the Bronx, needs $90,000 just to make ends meet.
Really?
This is why true cost of living measurement is important.
25,000
And
to
it's
90.
on the ballot.
Yep.
Right.
And it's blowing people's minds that it's on the ballot. I'm going to say something that is perhaps unpopular, and I'm going to say this as somebody who has worked in city government and state government, and has worked with elected officials at the city, state, and federal levels. We often talk about the accountability of government, but we do not talk about the accountability of the individual citizen. What we so often do is we elect people, and then we step away.
Right.
And we don't lean in. We may not like what they're doing, or we may not like what they're doing, or we may not like what they're not doing. But we don't say anything, and we're just like, oh, we have the power to hold government accountable. I'm just going to use, and I don't know if I'm being recorded or not, but I'm just going to use an example of, there's so many people out here right now who take issue with the back and forth at the city and state levels around bail reform. But how many individual citizens are talking about bail reform to elected officials? There's a big brouhaha right now in city government, debate between the city council and the mayor's office about the ban on solitary confinement. And who's talking about it? We're just letting them duke it out. What do you all think about solitary confinement? Are you making your voices heard? So accountability cuts both ways. The reason they're not accountable is because we don't hold them accountable.
Well, with that in mind, though, with this commission, and we all know budgets are written expressions of priorities. Yeah. How much money are they ready to invest in this initiative? Because creating all this fantastic policy, creating the commission, and then giving it $5 is not going to work.
So let's begin with this. You're asking, what is the fiscal cost attendant to this? First and foremost, we actually really don't know, because none of this creates a legal right of action. None of this says that definitively now the city's got to go and index X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But what I can tell you Because research has shown time and time again, if you invest in a prevention mode, in people, in communities,
Yeah.
it pays off.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, like, I don't even want to begin to get into a conversation about how much is this going to cost us, and we shouldn't
Well,
do it.
you have to figure it out.
No. But what I'm saying to you is that is like the scape that's the exit. That's when you raise that.
Right.
When we don't even know if it's really going to cost us more, we know we're expending more money annually to house people in Rikers that if we just provided, let me finish. If you just provided those critical supports at the outset, and a lot of what is happening in the communities, we know we have a race and poverty pipeline to prison in this society. That is structural racism. So what this is intended to do is to look at all of these inequities and say, let's make these critical investments up front if we need to, so we don't have to do it.
I agree with you, and that's logical. But I would say, listen, having run an arts commission for a state, I'm here to tell you that it costs more money to keep Guantanamo open in, I think, 1 month than the nation's entire cultural budget. Okay, so like.
So this is the very point we're making.
So I get your point. I understand what you're saying.
And it goes back to, so what if these proposals don't pass?
Well, we're right back where we started from.
Right. Well, let me first say that I think we will not have moved the needle, first and foremost. When George Floyd was killed, I actually wrote an article that was an op-ed that was put in the Daily News that talked about the importance of using this moment to not just center on racial injustice in policing, because it presents in every pillar of our society. This is that moment. This is that opportunity. If we do, and I'm speaking now not as the chair of the commission, but as an individual, if this moment passes us, we may not see it for a long time.
That's my feeling, and that's why we have to keep talking about these
we
things.
may not see it, and here's the deal.
We know that.
If New York City,
Can do it.
which prides itself on being a progressive city, says no
Oh boy.
to
And
equity,
the most diverse city in the,
so goes New York City, so
Right.
goes the nation.
Right.
But by the same token, too, though, if it passes in New York City,
Well, then
perhaps this could be a model that just gets some traction, and other cities copy New York, as we know they love
And
to
what
do.
I see also is the education, the things that are being rising the consciousness of New Yorkers, of people everywhere. There is no failing here, and we shouldn't even think about failing. We're moving forward.
We have to think about how to ensure that this passes.
Exactly.
So we have to think about what would cause it to fail, so that we can guard against it and put practices in place. And I think the question that has come up a few times is how do we engage how do we get people, people make decisions based on emotion and use logic to support it, right? So talking about this from a logical standpoint is not likely to get us where we need to be. We have to talk, wages is a huge issue.
Right. I mean, when you say that you lead with free, I completely get you, because it immediately resonates. And the fact of the matter is that it is not just people in communities of color.
Yeah.
Once we understand what the true cost of living is,
Right. Will benefit.
who
All
will
of
benefit,
us, yes.
right? And it's not just
And
communities
all
of
of us
color.
is
So
gonna work.
how did you make the argument to the white, I'm making a gross generalization here, to white folks who have money, because you talk about the prison to the pipeline, right? There's money involved. Those structures stay in place because people are making a lot of money. So this is not about a moral or a social or nice or the right thing to do. This is hardcore dollars and people who are opposed to this.
Right. Well, there have been reports over the course of the last several years, one of them produced by Citibank in conjunction with, I believe it was the McKinsey, the consulting firm, that demonstrated that if we invest in people and we bring about greater equity, New York, and not just New York City, the nation stands to make, in terms of our gross domestic product and the money that can be generated, trillions of dollars that it has actually cost the nation.
Absolutely.
By
On
not
the negative.
on the
Racism
negative.
costs.
But here's
Right.
the thing,
It
and
costs.
so I just saw a statistic. The top 1% the billionaires doubled their fortunes during the pandemic, when the 90%, let's say 60% lost, right? So the nation.
Well, this is
right?
how I come at it from it, and I hear
Yeah,
and I appreciate
yeah,
what you're saying.
yeah.
We also know that those people they represent like a fraction of the 1%. And so if the 99+%
Well, vote. This
lean
is
in,
the point.
right?
Yes, but
And-
this is how do we get the 99% to
Right,
act?
and
is
so
the
it
point.
becomes the
them
best way that I can
energized.
think about it is each one reach one, each one teach one.
That's it.
Right.
This
And
is a
so
ground game.
There
Right.
are 5 of us
Yeah.
here,
Yeah. Right.
and we
Game.
all have networks,
And there's an
we all
audience
have
out there,
community.
too.
Yes.
There's an audience out here.
Right.
There's an audience with us tonight. There's an audience in the days to
Yeah.
come. Each one reach
Yeah.
one. Like this is not like I want people to be able to share as much about these ballot measures as I can,
Right.
because I understand the value add. I'm going to tell you, I've been at this work
A long
for
time.
30 years. And what I've come to appreciate is that we can't program our way out of this. We can't policy our way out of this. If you build programs and policies on flawed structures,
Well, that's just a flawed program.
at best they're bad.
It's perpetuity.
So when I drop my toddler tomorrow morning at 5, my 5-year-old tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock,
I thought you
and
were
I
gonna say
see
you
the
drop her at
no
5
girl,
a.m.
no,
I was
no
like-
girl. I was like, look, I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
But when I drop her at 9 o'clock, I want to say to the gentleman that stands at the door, the security member for the school, you need to know about this.
Give him a
What
tote, a
would
bag.
you tell me? Oh, I'll give him a tote.
give him a bag, but
give
yeah,
me
no
a
question, I
nugget.
got you. What
What
is it?
should I
I got
just
you.
say as
Right.
an entry point to get him?
Absolutely. You should say
Hooked.
that for the first time in this nation,
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to essentially command of New York City government that they pay attention to the issues that have long kept individuals and communities of color from actually getting ahead. Not just getting by, but getting ahead. And there are 3 ballot measures that if you go out and vote and you flip that ballot, you can begin to have real voice and decision making in how this government sees you as having worth and value. Black Lives Matter, if you will, is not just a slogan. It's actually being actualized.
So do I vote yes? Is it a yes or a no?
I cannot tell you how to vote.
Yes. I'll
Should
say
New
it.
York City have an
yes.
Office of Racial Equity?
I will ask.
Should New York City have a measure of the true cost of living?
Yes.
And then how do we get people to go out and vote when most of our voting happens during primary season? So that's the other piece that we've got to push on, getting people out there.
Well, we
does
have-
it take, how much of a critical mass does it take though?
So we've got to have one more person who says yes than
And
the person who says no.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so we can have 10 people. I'm
Right,
just kidding.
but I'm
Just
going to
kidding.
tell you. But I'm going to tell you. That makes me excited, but I'm a little anxious about
Yes,
that.
yes,
Because
yes.
that may people may think, oh well, then I don't need to show up. The other thing is that I had a friend who said to me, well, you could fail, and I was like, this is not about me. But
You need new friends.
I need new friends, right? But and what I heard when this person, I do need new friends, right? But what I heard when that person said that to me was, there's a part of you that maybe doesn't want this to happen, right? And so, there are people out there. Not everybody wants you to succeed.
Yeah, but it's so much bigger than her.
Yeah.
Right.
Because my feeling is we want this to succeed because it is right for the country.
Right.
We're looking at a country right now that is in peril because of racism and the idea that people are fighting against what they think is their good, but they've got to look at things from a much broader perspective. That's what we're looking for.
Right. So people should Google racial justice, New York City. I believe it's racialjustice.gov.us. You should Google that, and you can gain more information. There are events that are going on around the city, and we encourage people to to lean in, listen, and then again, each one reach one. Each
That's
one
what it is.
teach one.
That is exactly it. So,
think for
you know what?
serious- yeah.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of Brooklyn Savvy. But we'll talk. Yes, we will all talk after.
conversation
The
continues.
good conversation actually happens after this. But anyway, just teasing. Jennifer, thank you so much for the work that you have been doing since
Teamwork.
COVID
All
to,
of us.
to make this all happen. And with the commissioners that were on in part 1. This is what Brooklyn Savvy is all about, amplifying these kinds of issues and voices. So we will see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.